Hello, my name is Robert Haynes from the Sugar Flower Studio based in London, and on this tutorial what I'm going to be showing you is how to make the Cymbidium Orchid. Very, very elegant. So that's the Cymbidium Orchid. So I hope you enjoy watching the video, and I'll see you next time. So I'm going to be making the column for the orchid. So these are in the set that I've actually selling, which the link is underneath this video. So this one is just a prototype just for the moment. I decided to make a one for the red orchid. This one on here was for the green or yellow orchid. So it's still in production at the moment, so please forgive me, but this will be on sale by the time this video comes out. So this is made from silicone plastique, and this one is the actual finished product on here. So this is made from the silicone. So I won't make this one at this particular time, because this one on here is going to be for the red orchid. So I'll just leave that to one side, and putting it onto the foam pad, putting a lot of corn flour in here. I can't stress that enough. You have to put lots and lots of corn flour in there, and then take all the excess out. Okay, so really take all of that excess out. And what I did before is I've made quite a few of these before, so what I did and tend to do, which is a good tip, is make it and then take it out and then scrunch that ball up of paste, and then that will give you exactly the amount of paste that you need each time, so you're not having to gauge it each time. So just work the paste, really, really warm the paste up, and then make it into a torpedo shape, and then just roll it in a little bit of corn flour, and then place that down inside, and then just help it along with your fingers and just across like that, and then placing the top veiner onto here. So then I'm just going to push that down onto there, and then really working the paste up into the little anther cap part in here. Now this one on here doesn't have an anther cap on here. That's what you'd have to do separately, but this one will have the whole anther cap in. I may make this again and include the anther cap on there, but it's very simple to do. All you need to do is a tiny little piece of paste and then attach that on later on. So just working the silicone and just really squeezing it, making sure that it's gone into the top cavity on here, and then I'm going to just remove that, and then I'm going to take a Dresden tool. Can you see just on here, it just needs to be pushed up a little bit more into there, so either using your fingers, or sometimes I'll just use the Dresden tool and then just push that up a tiny little bit more, just there, and then put the mould back on again. As I say, it's a little bit awkward with this one on here because it's a prototype and it's not with this squashy silicone, so just bear with me a second. And then just squashing that up into the top, and then take this off, and then you can see it's giving you the anther cap on the top there. Now just at the sides down here, we just need to tidy this up slightly. So just using a mini Kemper tool, and just go down the side here, and then don't be using a craft knife, otherwise it may cut into the actual silicone. So just taking those little bits off the side, and on this side over here, just cleaning up the edges. There we go. And then the beauty of this is that you don't need to put it into the freezer or anything like that. It just pops straight out. So we'll just go like that. If you've got enough corn flour on there, it should just pop straight out, and it just gives you the whole shape, every single thing into there. Now you need to attach this straight onto a wire, so I've got a 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to be using a pair of pliers, and then just making a cut up at the top here. But can you see what I'm doing? I'm actually just cutting it at a slight angle so it goes into the paste a lot easier. So putting a little bit of glue just onto the top there. Don't have too much. Just take the excess off, otherwise the paper starts to unravel. And then just going underneath the bottom of the column and then just twisting the wire, holding it in place, just twisting and twisting. You only want this halfway or a quarter of the way, that's absolutely fine. And then lifting that up, and then you can then just reshape just on the side. Can you see where I've just cut on the side there? It looks a little, so I'm just going to alter that. So just with my ball tool, holding it on the side and then just making it nice and thin just on the side there. Also on this side over here, we'll just take the, make it nice and thin there, and then I'll take a fine pair of embroidery scissors and just put a little bit of corn flour on, and then just correct the sides here, just going down and then just snipping off. There is a little bit of a ridge on the side on these anyway, so just snipping, don't take too much off, and then just snipping that, there we go, and then just give it a little bit of movement, so slightly leaving it to bend over. If you've not pushed the wire in enough, then sometimes if it's just a quarter of the way, and sometimes it tends to go over, so just do it halfway and then that should be absolutely fine, and then leave that to then dry. Sometimes if it is flopping over, what you can do is you can put a little hook on the end of this and then leave it over something and leave it to completely dry. Okay, so that's how I make the column for the orchid. So I'm going to be making the orchid petal, the Cymbidium orchid, and for that what I've actually done is I've got a piece of paste here. It's just brilliant white, and I've just put a little bit of cream paste in there as well, or you could use some colouring, whichever is slightly off white. So I'm just kneading the paste up, just getting my paste really nice and warm, and what I've done is I've actually made my own veiners, which are on sale, and you'll see the link underneath this video. And so I'll just leave the paste there just for 1 second. And so I've got the veiners here, and they are from the front and from the back of the actual petal, so they are very botanically correct, and with equal amounts of veins. So there's lots and lots of beautiful veins on there. So I've got them for each one of the petals, and all of the petals are here in front of me. And so all of the other veiners are in the bag at the side, but there's a picture which you'll be able to download as well. So that will show you in each one of these, front and back, on there. So for each one of the petals, what I've done is I've actually made a template. So using any plastic, I bought this plastic from, it's just a bendable plastic. I got it from an art shop, just a clear plastic, or you could use ice cream tubs or any type of plastic. So I've got the real flower. And then what I tended to do was dissect the flower and then put each one of the petals onto here, and then put the plastic on top, and then used a scriber and then scribed around, and then just cut the whole shape out with a pair of scissors, and that will give me a template. And what I did do then was, just to make it easier for myself, so that was the bottom right petal. So from that side there, because it would be a different shape turning it round, so what I did do is I actually scribed into there and then put BR and then red on there, so I know it's for the red orchid, and then it's for the bottom right petal on there. So that really helps me when it comes to cutting the shapes out and keeping it the right side, and then putting that then into the actual into the veiner. So I'm going to progress in making the actual petal. So putting the veiner onto my pad, putting a little bit of corn flour just on top, and then just taking the excess off. So that's already prepared. I've got my template in front of me. So using a green board, now you may notice on my board there's lots of scratch marks all on the board. Well, this really does help actually stick the paste onto there. So I don't mind using a craft knife on my board, because it really does help, especially with sugar flowers, to sticking on there. So I do even go across on all of my board and then just make marks on there. It does help with sticking the paste to it. So taking the paste that I warmed up before, a small amount of paste, it's a very fleshy flower, So always try and replicate whatever flower you're doing, you know, with the thickness of the paste. So it's quite a fleshy flower, so don't roll it too thin. So warming that paste up, rolling it into a little torpedo shape, placing it down onto my greased board, a little bit of corn flour on top, and then taking my rolling pin, just roll that out, not too thin, as I said, and then you want to put a little bit of a ridge down the centre. So my cell stick, this is like a large cell stick, so just putting that down the centre, and then 5 degrees out towards this, 5 degrees out towards the edge of the board, and then push up into the middle, and then push out, and then go back over that ridge 5 degrees that way, and then push in and then push out. Push in and push out, push in and push out. Just creating that little ridge down the centre. And then all of this up here, I don't actually need, so that's going to be for my petal there, I don't actually need the ridge to go all the way up into the centre. So I'll actually take that little bit off up there, just leaving myself a tiny little ridge down at the bottom, and that's going to be only a quarter of the way into that actual petal on there. So I'm going to take a bit of corn flour first of all before I put the template onto here. Sometimes if you don't put the corn flour on, sometimes the plastic sticks onto the paste. So then I can just rub over the top here. I know that it's slightly rough onto there, so I know that that's the right side up. With the, I can feel the scriber mark on there. So then just leaving that onto there, a little bit of corn flour onto my knife as well. And then what I tend to do is these little plastic squares, I'll actually put these underneath here, and it makes it a little bit like a turntable. So I can cut this all in one movement. So going down on the bottom, just cutting there, keeping the knife on, going all the way around, just keeping the knife there, turning this round, going up to the top, and then going all the way around, all into one nice fluid cut. And then just taking the template off, and then removing all of the paste, and there's my petal. So I'm going to be transferring this onto my petal pad, just going underneath here and then folding this over so you don't elongate the actual shape. So folding it over really helps, and then bring that to the end of the board. I'm going to be using a 28 gauge wire. You could use a 26 if you wanted to, all depending on how fleshy your flower is. So I've got a 28 gauge wire, cutting it at an angle. That helps go into the paste a lot easier. And then putting a little bit of edible glue onto the wire, taking the excess off. A little bit of corn flour onto my middle finger, placing that nice and flat onto the thick ridge that I've made, just pricking into the end there, and then just keeping my eyes closed, and then just feel the wire just going down. You must twist the wire as it goes down on the inside, just twisting it down. If you can see, it's just slightly come out there, just a little bit, not a problem, just pinch and press like that, and that all the paste will then go back round there. Okay, so I only need this in a quarter of the way, so bringing it to the edge of the board, and then just slightly pinch and press just around there, helping the paste stick to the wire. And then I'm going to be thinning all the edges out with my thumb first of all. So using the angle of my thumb, just going around the edge of the petal. What this does is, can you see, it's not even waving at all. So just using your thumb like that, you're actually using your thumb as a ball tool. I do this with all of my petals, all of my leaves. Using my thumb first of all, gives it a really nice gradient straight down, and then I can go on with the ball tool. So halfway on the paste, halfway off, always working away from you, don't hold the wire, just flatten it a little bit, and then, there we go. So that's nice and flat. So then I can put this into the veiner, so putting it straight onto my hand, and then onto the actual petal there. Now these templates here were from a red Cymbidium Orchid, which was a little bit wider than these, and these were for the green on here, but there's no problem at all. You can actually make an even bigger petal than this, and I'll show you how. So we'll start off with the top up here first of all, so just bringing that slightly in, and then always vein from the top there, so putting that down onto there, and then just hold this end up, and then press right down, really massaging it down onto there. Take this off very gently, so you've just done half of that, and then gently move it slightly in there, keeping it still in, don't move it around, just moving it straight up there, and then you can do the other side over there, making sure that it's just onto there, and then lifting this edge up there. You can do this with any veiner, and that really helps, so you don't necessarily have to buy all of the sizes of veiner that you're using, and then just bring that down, and then all the lines are perfectly matched up onto there. Now for this particular petal, this is the bottom right one on here. What I'm going to be doing is, can you see just underneath here, as they all are, they're slightly curved underneath the back there, and it just gives them a little bit of a wave on there. So it just makes them look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to take this and then place this upside down onto my foam pad, and then I'm going to use. You can use a number of tools. You don't even have to use a tool. You could just use your fingers and just be curling all of that back. I tend to like to use a tool. So I'm going to use a Dresden tool. Plenty of corn flour on there. And then, so it's the thicker part of the Dresden tool. You just want to go in just underneath the edge of the lip there, and then just press into there. Sometimes it makes a funny noise, which it's going to. So just going in and then just slightly just indenting just into there, and that will give you a tiny little bit of a lip. And then what you can do is then bring this edge over and then coax it around with your finger, and then really, you know, create an actual lip on the back there. Just keep on working it like that. And then exactly the same on the other side, just here. So all depending on what style of flower you're doing. You could do this with lilies as well, on the edge of the lily petal. So just at the bottom down here, I want to get a little bit of a wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a smallish ball tool, not too small though. And then I'm just going to work halfway on the paste, halfway off, just working that there, and that will actually then give me that little curve, little wave there. Okay, so just leave that there for 1 second. I'm going to be showing you very quickly how to make a little mould for this. So with a little bit of foil. So just bring all the edges of the foil round, and then just scrunch it up, open it out, and then using a rolling pin, cell stick, just go away from you like that, making it lovely and smooth. And then I can actually place this into my veiner and then press that down on there. And that will give me that actual shape of that petal on there. Or if you wanted it a little bit more, you could just use a ball tool and just go into there. That's what I do with tulips and stuff, just to curve it right up. So whichever you want to do. Now if I then place this down, because this is the front, if I then place that down onto there, I'm going to distort all of this detail on the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this over, and then I'll place that then on top of there. So then I don't destroy all of that. And then just let that go very leathery, keep on going back to it, and then just keep on coaxing the edges round, and that will give you a really nice petal. So that's that bottom petal on there. And then I shall carry on and make the throat, which will be the next thing that I'm going to do. So I'm going to be talking about how to make the throat for the orchid. These are the silicone moulds that I've had made, and these are from the front and from the back of the throat. As you can see, they fit perfectly on there. So with any new veiner, always put plenty of corn flour on just to begin with. Plenty of corn flour, front and back. Can't stress that enough actually with this one. Plenty of corn flour. and then just take the excess off, not too much, it does need to have a lot of corn flour, and then it comes out beautifully. Okay, so that's that on there. We also need to make a mould first of all, so when we've made this, then we can then put it straight into the mould. So a piece of foil, just bring the edges round so it's wide enough just on each side, that's perfectly fine. And then just scrunch this up, open it out, and then get it nice and smooth, so then you'll get all of the little details onto there, so then it will sit in, when the sugar's made, it will actually sit in there and it won't have any rough edges on the back. So then folding that like that, putting it down into the middle, placing this one on top, and then squashing that right down onto there, really moulding this round. Now then when I'm just going to take the top bit out first, okay? So then just go right underneath, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend all the edges back and then make a little bit of a platform there so that it's nice and flat for me to then sit it onto that. Okay, so it doesn't rock around. So that's there, my preparation first of all. So taking a little bit of grease, just put that onto my board. Just taking the excess off of here. And what I made was a template for the throat. As I explained before in the other video, this one is made out of plastic, and I just scribed round the whole of the throat petal, and it's given me this on here. Okay, so that's my template. I'm going to take a piece of well-kneaded paste. This is just a little bit of cream paste, slightly off-white paste. Don't have it too cream coloured, all depending on the actual colour of the throat that you're doing. So, but I know that my finished and end result that I want is just slightly off-white. So kneading that up and then placing that down onto the board, a little bit of corn flour on top, and then rolling out very gently, but leaving it really, really thick in the centre. And then going from one side, pushing up and then out, and then on the other side pushing into the centre and then rolling out, and then down onto this side here. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a little ridge all down the centre there. So this is just going to be on the inside here. These are going to be for the little pollen tracks, that's on the inside here. So I need to leave all this really, really, really nice and thick. So then just for that little bit there, so then I can put the rolling pin onto here and then just take that other little bit away. So it just gives me a little bit of a square mountain in the middle of my paste. Okay. Taking some corn flour, just put that on top so that the actual template doesn't stick onto the paste. Placing that on top of here, as I said, this little perspex square, put that underneath, and then it will revolve round on here like a turntable, so I can cut this all in one motion. So placing that on top, and then try not to squash this centre bit. Just start cutting, keeping the knife nice and flat. Don't have it up like that, otherwise it drags the paste. So keeping it as flat as you possibly can, and then just moving this around. There we go. Doesn't matter if it moves a little bit at the front, it's fine. We're going to alter the shape of that anyway. So then just going round all in one fluid motion, straight down to the bottom, and then just cut that little bit off at the bottom there. Removing all of the paste. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to smooth all of the edges of this down actually on the board. So using my thumb, just using my finger or my thumb, just going around the edge, and it just helps to smooth that angle of the paste down like that, so it's not such a ridge before I just go on with the ball tool. So I'm just going around, thinning all of that down. That's fine. And then taking all of this onto a corn-floured pad. Going underneath, I've got corn-floured fingers and thumbs, just folding that off and then placing that onto my pad. Now you can do this one of two ways. You could have left this on here and then cut into there with a scalpel, or what you can do is you can lift the whole thing up and just with embroidery scissors, just into these little angles here, what you can do is just do a small little snip. So it's just a small little indent into there, and then the same, just turn the scissors round and then just straight into there. So I'll just put that on the back of here so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. So it's just a small snip into there, okay? So then what I want to do is I want to go on with my ball tool now. So using a large ball tool, half on the paste, halfway off, going all the way around the surface area of the throat, and also as well down into these two little snips there. So just once like that, that's absolutely fine. Then I'm going to put this into the throat mould. So folding the whole throat in half like that. Make sure that these two little snips here are open like that, and then what I tend to do is put my finger underneath here and slightly curve it like that, slightly curve it before I put it in. So taking the top off the mould and then putting this down onto the inside. See, I just need a little bit more corn flour in there. I can't stress that enough. Okay, and just placing that down onto the inside in there, and then using your fingers just manipulate it and then bring it down. And you'll see on the two sides here, there and there, there's like a split. Okay, so that's like as the throat splits open down. So what I'm going to do is these little splits here, I'm going to open this out and then just put one piece of paste underneath there and one piece of paste underneath there. That's fine. And then right at the back down here, just make sure that that's really pushed right down. And then I'm going to take the throat and then just open this out and then gently just slide that down onto there. As I'm doing that, you'll see that there's two little tracks here, and they actually fit onto the inside onto the side of the silicone. So just making sure that as you then go and push this in, that one slits into that side, and then that one slides into there like that. Okay. Then you want to start to push all of the veiner and then manipulate all of that paste so it's then going up on the inside, creating these two lovely tracks on the inside here, okay, the pollen tracks. So don't push too hard, otherwise it all like comes out. It doesn't matter too much at the front here. I'm going to make that all frilly anyway, so that really doesn't matter at all. It's just trying to get that paste up inside there so you've got those pollen tracts. And then the way that this has been designed is that you can turn the whole thing upside down and then put it flat onto there, and then with two fingers here open this out, one finger here, hold onto there, and then the whole thing all comes out all in one go. Okay, so that's if you've got enough corn flour on there. Okay, so then what you want to do is we want to give this a little bit more detail now. So I want to take all of this off of here, and you'll see that all of the pollen tracks are all on the inside there. Some of the pollen tracks on some of the orchids are really pronounced, so you may even want to use a pair of tweezers. You could put this back into here, and you could use a scriber just to go on the inside of those, just making them a little bit more pronounced, and you could use a pair of tweezers to go in here and then pinch up a little bit more. Sometimes the pollen tracts are separated out into two. Each one is separated out into two, all depending on how progressed your actual orchid is and what type of orchid it is as well. So all I'm doing is I'm pinching each one of these two pollen tracts to make them seem as though they've split open. You may even want to put a little bit more detail on the front here, which I am going to do. As you can see, some of the paste has actually come out of the bottom down here. If you wanted to have a nice big frilly throat on there, then leave all of that paste. If you wanted it a little bit shorter, then you could actually go and trim that off with a pair of scissors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use all of this paste here. I'm going to use a medium ball tool, and I'm going to just put that onto here, and then just slightly just go onto the edge, thinning that out, just thinning that out. And then just into this top corner up here, it is a little frilly, so using the ball tool and putting the ball tool halfway on the paste and halfway off, and putting pressure and rolling from one side to the other like that, and that will give you a natural frill on the side there. I'd just like to do it just into the corner, just on this particular one, this red orchid. It was just on the sides there, and then all underneath I'm going to turn this over, and then I'm going to use my Dresden tool, and like the thick end of the Dresden tool, and I'm just going to go underneath and then slightly cup inwards like that. So I'm pulling and pushing inwards. So pulling inwards just like that. Just on those two sides there, it tends to curve underneath there like that. So as you see from the front, it looks a little bit like a triangle going down. So it's flat here and then triangular shape down at the bottom. And then what I have is my mould already made, so I can then place that into there and then curve it right back and give it the shape that it is. And then if I wanted to give it any more movement at all, I could just use the foil, and then I'd leave that. And what I did do is I left it to go, I would say 90% leathery, and then I coloured it all, and then I attached it onto the front of the column, which we'll be doing later on. So I'm going to be colouring the column, which is the middle part of the orchid. So I've got an array of colours here. Obviously, whichever type of orchid you're doing, you know, really study it and look at it. You know, I just spend about five minutes really looking and just seeing. So the orchid at the bottom down here, this little baby is a real, of course, is a real orchid down here. And then I've just put mine just on the top there, just as a comparison. But when I bought the orchids, I go down to a Covent Garden flower market in London and get a huge stem, and then bring them back, and then you know, dissect and kill half of them with making silicone molds. You know, so the silicone molds you can see at the bottom of this link is the molds for sale. So they're from the front and from the back of the actual orchid. So you know, so I spend a long time trying to see what's the actual base colour on the actual leaves first and all of that, and then be analysing and really looking at the detail that's on there. So this one has already been coloured over here, so just going to show you like a comparison there of those two. Okay. So so I really do need to be looking to see what would actually go on first, you know. So I need to have the background colour on first, so like a dusting colour first, before I do any painting of any dots or anything. If I did paint all the dots and then put the dust over the top, it's going to smudge and smear. So so I need them to be quite precise. So so I need to be putting like a little bit of a base colour on here. The actual base colour of paste on here it's just a brilliant white with a little bit of cream mixed in there, and then I put a the tiniest pinch of pink in there as well, so it's just got it's non-visible really, but I kind of know it's in there. So so when you're painting and dusting, you know, so I'm going to do all the dusting first, just on here and on the back as well. So it's not a pure white on here, so I want to just give that a little bit of a background colour. So the colours that I've got this colour here, which is a Cornish cream by Sugar Flare. So I'm just loading up my brush, and then I'm just going to take a little bit of the excess off, and then just holding the column up. So I'll leave this one over here, and then just holding the column up and then just supporting underneath. It's very rigid anyway, you know, it's very sturdy. So just starting from the bottom, I lift this up so it doesn't fall down onto the top of the column, lifting it up like that over here, and then just dusting upwards, and then just fading it. So I'm just using the back of the brush, I'm just going up and then just getting quite a bit of colour onto the bottom, and then just fading it upwards. Okay, so that's just on the back, and then on the front here I want to be putting like a yellow. So I've got a It's a lemon yellow, and I've also put a little bit of tangerine in here. They're both from Sugar Flare. So I can use the same brush because it's got yellow on there. That's absolutely fine. So just mixing those two together to actually create like a very, very warm orange. Okay, so I can still go into this over here, that's fine. Just taking the excess off. And very important, now just hold it up exactly the same, but this time dust downwards because I don't want it to go up here. So I'm going to be dusting downwards, so just going down into the centre, and then slightly up on the sides, just slightly. And then now with the residue of that's left on the brush, I can then just gently go up and then just fade that into the top of the column that's just on there. Okay. Now, I also do need to do some other dusting just on the top here onto the anther cap, which is this part on here, which is enclosed in the actual veiner, so you don't need to add on the anther cap for the other veiner for the column that's on sale as well. They're still in production at the moment. I may just end up with one particular column, so I don't have to have two. Maybe this one was done at a later stage. It's a wider column, and this one has actually got the anther cap attached onto there. So I need to actually colour the anther cap on there, and I want to be doing that in a little bit of a very, very light pink. Okay, so I've got one just over here. So this colour is called Dusty Pink, and it's by the Sugar Art. So I only need a tiny amount, just a small amount. And then if you need to take any excess off, use a kitchen paper towel. You can always add colour on, but it's hard to take away. So, and I'm just going to use it like as a stenciling kind of, you know, I'm just doing that. I want a little bit of the white to show through. So it's just on the top there, that's absolutely fine. And then I'm just going to go onto the top behind here, and I'm just starting to colour the top portion of the column. Now the reason why I'm putting this dust down onto here is just to give a base colour before I actually go on and put some really dark paint straight onto here. It just helps it. It's like when you're painting a room. If you've got like a deep red room, you'd probably paint it beforehand in an undercoat of a dark pink. So that's just what I'm doing. So just gently just onto there, and it just kind of has a little bit of a fading on there underneath, so it's not so harsh. So that's all of the dusting that I need to be doing onto there. So I do actually need to glaze this now, because I'm going to be making up a wet alcohol paint, and then I'm going to be putting all of the little dots on there. Now if I did do that straight away now, it's a dusty surface on here, and it's just going to blot straight out like that, and it's going to look a bit of a mess. So so I need to so I've got the glaze bath here. It's very, very quick. So just straight into the glaze bath, just give it a little bit of a wash, that's absolutely fine, and then straight into a clear container or a a cardboard box at home, and then just spin the excess off. Let me just put that into there like that. That's it, just spin the excess off, just keep on spinning, and then it dries very, very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Okay, that's more or less dry now. Okay, it's pure alcohol, just dry straight away. I'll just pop that into there for 1 second. Always make sure that you put your lid on your glaze. I'll take that out of the way just for the moment. Okay, so now comes the fun part. So I can start to then put all of the paint on here. So I need to be making up an actual paint. So these colours that I've got here, I've mixed up. There's a colour called Burgundy by the Sugar Art, and I've put a little bit of aubergine in there as well, just into this mix here. There is, in fact, in here as well, there's a tiny little bit of African violet. It just takes it from the red into a little bit of like a purple. Okay, so not purple, but you know, it's just got that tinge of purple in. So I'm just going to be popping some alcohol just into here, just to create a nice thick paint. And then I'm going to be mixing this paint up, just mixing it up to get a nice There we go. Notice I went into the lighter colour first before I then go and mix the darker one. So just mix that up. That's fine. I can use the paintbrush now and then go into the darker one. And now I'm going to paint the dots all onto the column and then bring this to life, and then I'm going to paint all onto the top. Okay, so putting this just to one side, I've got my little plastic square here, and I'm going to start to use a much finer brush, and people who have been on my classes will all know Richard. This is Richard, my favourite brush, and he was given to me by Vindra, my very lovely friend from Canada. And hi Vindra. So I know that she'll be downloading and subscribing to this video. So I'm going to take some of this paint out, and then I'm just going to put it onto here, and then actually blot from here and then paint from there. I wouldn't necessarily go straight into here, straight onto there, because it would look, you know. Okay. So this is the one that I've dusted before, and then, you know. So I'm going to start to. Normally I would have the flower right in front of me. Okay, it's just there, you know, so I've got it for reference, but I've done quite a few of these so far, so I kind of know the design of what I'm looking for. Now I'm just going to very gently just go in. There's a tiny, let me just take that brush there, actually the yellow brush, sorry. There's a tiny little bit of green here, tiny little bit of green. And it's the tiniest bit of green that you possibly want. And just underneath the anther cap on here, I just want this to be minimal, absolutely minimal. It's not even dusting really. I'm just going to pop that just underneath there. Can you see the brush I've got? It's a directional brush. It's a flat-ended brush. And I'm just going to pop that just to one side, and I'm just going to go underneath the anther cap. And that just gives, you wouldn't even know it's there really, it's just, I know it's there, it's just a tiny little bit of green just underneath, okay? So back to the painting. So I'm going to start off with the lighter colour of paint, okay? So always start with the lighter and then go on to the darker, okay? So the lighter colours are all down at the bottom, and then they actually go darker up towards the top. And then we want to be putting some lighter colour on here and then darker up on the edge. So I'll actually start, just to get myself used to the paintbrush, don't start doing all the dots and things, get some real colour on there, and then just have a little practice first. So holding this up, and I'm going to start to just do like a little bit of a line. It actually, the veiner gives you this line, so it's the top of the column, right next to the anther cap, and then down. So just bringing the paint down. My little friend Richard here always gives me a fabulous job. I talk to my paintbrushes, is a little bit sad really, but and then you actually have some kind of lines coming down here, so you can be using your artistic license if you haven't got one in front of you, or do as I do and go and buy some real orchids. They are all different. They all do have little bits of different designs on them, so I've put some little lines just kind of coming down onto that side there. It's like with nature, you know. I love nature's imperfections. You know, it's if it was all just perfectly perfect, then it would be, you know, it's these little imperfections make it beautiful. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually just started to put some smaller dots down onto here, just some smaller dots like that. So I'm really just getting a minimal amount of paint onto here, and I'm actually just separating my brush out. Can you see I've separated it out? And then just separate him out, and then you'll get lots of tiny little dots, okay? So lots of little baby dots like that. And I'm just going to, it kind of, what's the word? It kind of staggers itself down. So it is this colour coming down. They're not single dots, but it kind of all fades off like that, but they are all kind of joined together, but they are all little dots, if you know what I mean. Okay, now we're going to put some detail on the bottom. These are they're actually nice big lines like that, believe it or not. And, you know, they are on the back of this orchid, nice big lines down. And then they go down into smaller spots on the back. And then down at the side, down on here as well. Do make sure that you do round the bottom, round here, because this is going to be noticeable on the orchid as well. This is why I put so much detail. George, the gentleman who makes me the veiners, you know, we work together very, very closely, and he goes shopping in markets in Valencia, flower markets, on Skype, and I say, no, not that flower, yes, maybe that one, okay, we'll do that one, and then we go with veiners from there on. So, yeah. So just going down the side now, just going to put some little lines just on the side here. So I'm just catching, let me just bring them all together. I want a nice fine print. So I'm just going to get some nice little lines just going down onto the side there, and then some tiny little dots as well, just going up onto the side, and the same on the other side. Use your artistic license, it's absolutely fine. All adds to the beauty. And then that's all the back done on there so far. Now I'm going to go and do all of the tiny little dots. I'm going to move over onto a smaller paintbrush, so I can do some really, really small dots. But it all depends, you know, on what type of orchid you're doing. So I'm just going to go into here and then just start to put the dots on in here. You can get them really, really fine, or, you know, it's up to you. I'll be a little bit quick with this one for you, so I'll just put the dots on here. Sometimes they go in dots of lines going up like that. You know, it's have a look and see what design you've got. Now, when I come to attach the actual throat, I'm actually going to put a piece of flower paste, gum paste, just onto here, and then kind of hollow it out a little bit. So you are going to see right down to here. So do take your time, and everything will be visible. And that's how I actually attach the actual throat onto the bottom. So then I've got all of my light coloured dots down onto here. So I did say that I was going to start to go a little bit darker. So now I can still use the same paintbrush, and I'm going to go into the Aubergine by Sugar Flare. So just keep on bringing the paint over to here, and then paint from here. And it seems to be like a line that goes, it's like there is like in the actual veiner, you'll actually see where you need to paint just across there. So it is an actual line just across there, and then up to the other side. And then I'm going to then just come down and then just give some little detail, kind of little dots kind of coming down as well, but just coming down that side. And when I'm at home painting, people will tell you when I'm in class, I always tell my students this, me and Barbara Streisand, we're off. I always get either Babs on, or I love all types of music, Indian rain music and all sorts of music, and I just get lost, and I just get carried away and just start, you know. So I've got those little dots on there. Now I need to just join them down into the other one. So, and they are actually, they're quite long kind of stripes, like they were on the back. They're like kind of like stripes that go down and then go into these other lighter little dots on there. And then finally, I'm just going to go into my lighter colour. I'm just taking the excess off there. So just going into the lighter colour, And what I'm actually going to do, let me just pop that into there 1 second. I'm going to put in some more alcohol straight into this colour, because it's a little bit more like water painting, watercolours, okay? So if I put all of that into there, it's weakened the colour, because that's exactly what I want. I want it to be kind of like a little bit of a wash up at the top, and I'm just going to go underneath the anther cap and then just put in some fine detail on here. So I'm actually going to go underneath the anther cap, just under there, underneath here, and you'll actually start to see how much detail there is in this veinner. You know, there's a tiny little, I call it, it looks like an eagle's face. So this is like kind of like the beak here, and then I'm just going to just dab around just on the front, just in tiny little spots, and going down onto through the middle, there's tiny little dots onto there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into the dark aubergine, and just behind the anther cap here, I'm actually going to paint on top of the lighter, and then kind of fade that down, so kind of blend it in. So put little brush strokes kind of coming down on top of that, because it's a little bit darker just on the top. Now, I did say that on the front it reminded me of an eagle's face, because there are two, they look like little eyes that are a little poking out. So to get those, what I tend to do is, before I actually steam and glaze this, I'm actually going to scrape those off. So just going in on each side, and actually, do you know what, I can actually put this down onto here, because it's not going to damage it at all. Just be careful that you don't rub it around and lose the colour. But I'm actually going to, can you see, I'm just scraping off there, and just scraping off there to reveal two little eyes, and it's got its little beak on the front there. You could, even if you wanted to, you could enhance the beak by, just scraping that off, so it's a little bit more visible on the front. So, because this is the focal point of your actual orchid, so people look right into the centre, and that's what they'll be looking for, you know, into the centre. So just those fine little details make it look a little bit better. So I'm just going to get my steamer, and then just turn the steamer on, and then I'm going to just steam all of this on here. And as I said before, the reason why I'm actually going to steam it is because I don't want all of these little dots to then come off. So I'm just going to steam this first of all, because I don't want any of the little dots to come off. So I'm just going to bring the steamer over. I'm just putting my hand just in front, just to see where the heat is. I don't want it too hot. So just around up here should be absolutely fine. Should just be nice and gentle just onto there, and then just turn it round. Yes, it will go darker, but that means that it's just the sugar is melting slightly, and it's just getting all of that colour secure and stable onto the sugar. Okay, so now I've done that, I can then go and put this straight into the glaze. If I hadn't have done that, this alcohol, when it dries, it goes straight into dust. So I've done it time and time again. So you learn by your mistakes, and I've done all of this intricate detail on something, and then just gone in and then just given it a wash, taken it out, and I've lost half of it. This is great for doing begonia leaves or anything that you need that fine detail on, or little dots of alcohol. So do try and just steam it first lightly, and then it's a lot more, it's a safer option. So I'm just going to go into here, not being too long, just taking straight into there, and then I'm going to then just spin the excess off into here. So just keeping my finger above the wire just there, so it doesn't wobble around all over the place. You may experience, a tiny little bit did come off there, but not as much as if I hadn't have steamed it beforehand. So yes, it will have gone a lot darker now. Okay, it will go quite dark, but then it will just dry, and then it will come back, all of the beauty will just come back, and then that's how I colour the column. The next video will be how to actually colour all of the throat, which is really exciting, and then we're going to attach that all onto there, and then it's just going to all come to life. Okay. So I'm going to colour the throat now. So as you saw in the previous video, I've actually put it onto its little foil mould on here. So I can take this off, and it's perfectly dry, you know. I'm just going to leave it completely dry, or you could leave it till it's very, 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 very leathery, then colour it, because I do need to, well, I've already measured it before, but I do know that I need to put this on the inside on here, and it just fits on the inside. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to colour the whole thing and get it looking like this on both sides. Okay, it is a very long process, so please bear with me. And so I've used the colours, exactly the same colours as what I was using in the last video to colour the column. So I've already got this on here. It's not that I'm a messy worker, it's just that these colours are already here. So I'm actually going to use those the same again. So just taking a small paintbrush, I'm just going to load this yellow up that I had before. Just loading that up, and then I'm going to be doing the dusting first of all. So just going underneath here and onto the two pollen tracks that are here. You know, I can just take in my paintbrush and just holding it upside down like that. So I've got it like a directional brush here. So it's like a flat brush, and I'm just going to catch on those pollen tracks. Look at the angle of how, as I'm holding this. I'm not doing it like that, otherwise it would fall straight onto. So I'm just going to come down all onto the bottom here. You can get a lot of the colour down onto the bottom, so just a tiny little bit just onto there. And then just getting lots and lots of yellow just onto the back there. Lots and lots and lots of yellow, even going with a little bit more intense yellow right down into the bottom, and then just fading that up the sides, up the back. Even if you've got a little bit on there, it doesn't matter. If you have got some on there, you could just use a clean brush and just take that straight off. That's fine, it's not a problem. Artistic license. So just at the bottom down here as well, I like to just put a tiny little bit as well, so it's just, you won't even know it's really there, it's just a tiny little bit, okay? So that's the first stage, and then I'm going to go on to actually using a paint and making lots of different like kind of watercoloured paints. So I have actually got some water in, I've just taken a little bit of water from a pipette and then just put that into there, and you'll see that I've already started making some colours on here. So I'm going to bring some of these colours into the equation now. So these are by Sugar Flare. These are gel colours, as they say in America. These are they are the paste colours. Okay, so we call them paste colours in the UK. So I'm going to be mixing these up with a small paintbrush, and I've also got a glass of water here as well, because it's just watercolouring, okay? You could add alcohol in here if you wanted to, but doing it with water, because I'm just doing fine little veins and things like that, that's perfectly fine to do so as well, okay? So you can just make sure your paintbrush is nice and clean, and I'll just show you how I actually did that. So I want to just get some white. Just get a little bit of white onto my paintbrush, so it's a nice clean paintbrush, and then just pop that into, I'll just bring this around here, the camera can see, so just that into there, and then take off the excess, and then you can then go into your colours on here. So what I want to actually be doing is I want to be creating, I'll show you how I made these colours here. So just going in, and this colour's a pink, just pure pink, and it goes really pink, that's absolutely fine. Now for trying and seeing what colour you've actually got, use a plain piece of paper. So let's just take a plain piece of paper so then you can actually see what colour that you've got. So that just on there, it's very, very, very pastel at the moment. So I want to put a little bit more depth into there. But because this is slightly, it's got a little bit of purple in, I'm going to go in with this colour here, which is magenta. And then I'm just going to add that into there. So it starts to make it a little bit darker. Then I'm going to go in, make sure you keep on cleaning your brushes, otherwise you'll get all of your paints all mixed up. So now I'm going to put a tiny little bit of scarlet in here. Just a tiny little bit. That's fine. Building up, and then I'm going to go in with this colour here called Dusky Pink Wine. Now, it's very intense, so be careful. But I want to make a little bit darker than these colours on here. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there, tiny little bit more. So now you can see there's like different colours starting to, a tiny little bit more. There we go. That's it. That's fabulous. Okay, so I'm just going to put that straight onto there, and then you'll actually see the lovely colour that I've got onto there. Okay, so I'm going to start to put on some tiny little dots and some veins along the side of the throat. So as you can see, I'll just lift this one and turn this one round. Can you actually see just down onto the side here, there's lots of little veins just going down onto there. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put all of the dust onto here and then put all of the veins on, because then it all kind of blots. I am going to do it on here. I'm going to be a little bit naughty, but you know, it's just some, don't necessarily see that too much. I'm going to be putting some darker aubergine dots on here with a very strong paint onto there. Okay, so that's fine, but just onto here, I'm going to be using this watercolour. So I'll take my plastic square and then put the colour onto here. Now, I kind of know that that's a little bit too dark. So I want to be going in with one of these lighter colours here. So just bring in little dots just straight onto here. That's fine. And then I'm going to paint from here. Okay. So just taking that there, and I'm going to start up from the top. And then I'm just going to go down, and it's like watercolouring. It really is. Okay. So you're just putting a little wiggly lines, just going down, going all the way down. There we go. And then obviously be looking at your real flower, and then just keep on coming down. And then what I tend to do is where these lines finish, I then put them down into little, they kind of end in little dots coming down. Okay. So I think what I will do for the purpose of this video is I'll just do one side on here, and then that will give you, you know, because it took me maybe an hour and a half to actually be painting all of this. So I've started off with those on there, and then what I did was I did the other dots on the inside then. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the other colour that I had from the column, which is the dark aubergine colour on here. I'm going to actually mix in, so going into the aubergine, and I'm going to actually mix in there some of this colour called claret. And that's this beautiful colour by Sugar Flare. So just mixing some of that in to take away from that dark aubergine, and it kind of gives it a more of a reddy appearance. Okay, so that's the colour I want for my dots. So just mixing all of that in. That's just into, so this is actually into an alcohol over here, okay? So this will dry off. So just keeping these dots separately. There we go. So yes, it looks very, very dark on there, but look what happens when I put it onto here. And then when it dries, it'll actually go into a reddy colour, okay? So I want to go down onto the bottom. I'll just have a look on here just for my reference from last time, okay? And then I want to be putting lots and lots of little dots, and they are quite large dots actually, down on the back here. This is where you can use your artistic license, as they say. And there are a few dots as well onto the pollen tracks up here. That's fine. So just carry on with all of those. Now when I was doing all of my veins on here, I would do the other side on the inside here, all on this side here, and all on that side as well. Okay, so then I'm just going to take off the excess there. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to start dusting over the top on here now. Okay, so getting a, I call them projectional brushes. These ones are, they're like a flat-ended brush on here. So I'll just go underneath the actual throat first of all. So we're going to go on with this colour here, which is called Dusty Pink by the by Sugar Art. Just a little bit. There we go. So I'm just going to be holding this underneath here, and then I'm just going to be using the brush and just getting some colour on just underneath the throat, and then kind of fading it down. Just tap the excess off. And then I'm going to go on just over that as well with this darker colour here, which is a claret. And then I'm just going to hold it up here, and I'm actually going to be just putting in little areas of, can you see, I'm actually creating a pattern, but I'm kind of vibrating my hand and then just getting a little pattern in there. And then I'll actually be painting on top of this later on. Okay. So the next thing what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go over all of this on here with this claret colour, and then start to get up some veins and some detail on there. So really load your brush up. And I can't stress this enough, you need to hold it in the correct position, otherwise it will go all onto here. So holding it so it will fall down to gravity, and then using the actual brush, there we go. So just using the actual brush, getting lots and lots and lots of colour onto the top lip on there, and then using the back of the brush. So using the back of the brush, just coming down, and then start to use the back of the brush, and on this actual vein, can you see all of those lovely veins? That even it's got all of the veins on there, even though you can't see it because it's a white paste, but they are all on there from this veiner. It's a beautiful veiner. So you get all of the veins on there, then soften all of that. So just come down the way and then just soften. When you're going over the veins, it looks quite harsh, but then you come down and then just soften on top. Now you'll think that all of those little veins that we've just painted on there beforehand are being lost. Well, they're not. When they come out of this, out of the glaze later on, they all then just you know, you'll see them through the through this dusting. Makes it look more natural. So just coming all the way down. That's just on one side, and then carry on over on this side, onto that side there, and then onto the other side. I do like to put a little bit into the corner around here as well. So just being careful as you're putting that onto there, just fading round the side there, and just adding a little bit just onto the corner. Okay, now you may want to, after you've done all of that, you then may want to dust a little bit just on the side here, or you could just paint the detail on. You can kind of, can you see what I've done at the front here? There's areas in here where I've kind of softened it underneath first, so I've kind of dusted a bit here, dusted a bit there, all depending on what design you're doing on the throat. So just kind of, you need to put that dust on first before you're actually going to paint onto there. So I'll just show you how I painted the front as well. So, so taking, let's go on with this paintbrush. Okay, so just going into the front, painting all of the front with this, let's move this over here. Okay, so blot onto there, and then have your throat in front of you so you can see the design, obviously the real flower. And then what I like to do is put a line from the front and then going up, oopsie, then just going up into the middle. It's quite a wide one, so that's fine, don't worry. Just into the middle there, that's it, there we go. Just down, and I like to put little, it's not a perfect line, so just make it look a little bit more natural, there we go. Okay, and then I like to start painting around the edge here, but leaving myself a tiny little white lip going around, which is a little awkward because we have put so much detail in bending it round. So take your time, and then just going around to meet the line up at the front, and then just going all the way around and then making it a nice thick. I'll just do half of this for you, and then just coming around, and then be really analysing and looking at your real flower, and then really going to town, you know, really getting all that detail on there, because this is the focal point of your actual flower, so people will be looking, and you know, this is where your eyes first capture that, you know, what you've made. So just going all the way around, and then blending it up into all of this, the dust on this side round here. Okay, you can then put some tiny little dots on here if you wanted to, just coming up. You know, sometimes there's little bits in here. That's fine, okay. And then, as I say, tiny few little dots onto the pollen tracks on there. And then what I tend to do is I'll have a look and see, and then maybe add a little, even after I've done all of that, maybe add on a little bit more dust. I may even want to go over here and then put on some finer details just onto the top there, and then add in, can you just see around the top here, I've gone in with some darker dots, just kind of coming down, just around there, you know. Just try and mimic what you have in front of you, okay? And then once all of that is done, I then put that back into its little nest on there. And then how I can then attach this onto the throat, which I am actually going to do straight away now. I've got a small amount of paste here, and to glue all of this onto the column, you need to have a really strong glue. So I've got some white flour paste, and I've mixed it with some egg white, and I've mixed it up with a fork. Some people call it gunge. I'm not too sure of the technical term of it, but it's a very strong glue, and that's what I've got in here. So this white, this glue here. So I'm going to now attach this onto the column. So I need to just be making just a small ball of paste. That's absolutely fine, no more than that, that's fine. And I'm going to take the column that I'd made before, and I'm going to take a paintbrush. Let's take a new paintbrush. Where are we? Oh, actually it's here, I had one before. There. So just going into the glue, and then I'm just going to put the glue around the base of the column, just around the base there, and a tiny little bit on the inside, just a little bit. And then I'm going to take this piece of paste, not too much, about the size of a pea, that's fine. And then I'm going to just attach that onto the front there, can you see? Just attach that, and then I'm going to use my fingers and then really stick it right down onto the front of the column, not going around the sides or anything like that, you know, destroying all of the detail that you've put on there. But now what I'm just going to pinch into the front here, just pinching very gently. You can even use the end of a paintbrush just to make sure, that this is really stuck down. So kind of blending it in to the bottom of the column there, just like that. So it's a tiny little bit proud. And then we're going to be dusting over that with a little bit of the yellow, again just to kind of disguise. There we go. Let's get a little bit more intense yellow on there. That's fine. And I'm going to put a tiny few dots just at the front, because you're going to be looking down into this. So a few little dots just on there. There we go. And then going back on with the glue again. So I'm going to put the glue just onto the front. I have one of those tables, what they called an artist's table. It's getting all a little bit messy, but we are artists after all, you know, and we have to get into the zone, you know. So I put all of the glue just onto the front there, and then I'm going to take the column, so the throat, and then if you have been looking, this is nice and leathery now. You can then just go and then slightly open that, okay, and then you just want to just put that. I'll turn it around this side so you can see. So I'm just going to put that onto the front there, and then it just fits on there beautifully, okay. And then I'll turn it around so you can see there a little bit more, and I'm just going to just take the glue off, and then just, so with cornfloured fingers, just make sure that you're just, that's it, just press it right down. This glue's very, very strong, and because it's got the paste straight away, it glues on straight away, and it's absolutely fine. It's fine. Okay, but you could just give that a slight bend if you were feeling a little bit apprehensive and it's not going to stay on. Just leave it there, making sure that the position of it is how you want it to be. Some of them, the throats are really quite high and the column is right down on the inside, but I like to see all of the detail down on the inside, and then leave that to completely dry, and then bend the wire back up and then put it into the glaze. Well, actually, you could steam it all, couldn't you? So you could steam all of the throat. I do apologise. Steam all of the throat, then put it into the glaze. That's what I'll be doing on the next video, and then you can then go and attach all of your petals onto the front, okay? And then the final thing is I'm going to show you how to put all of the little tiny hairs just around the side of the throat. So I'm going to steam all of the throat. The throat has been coloured, so is the column, and it's all been glued onto the bottom on here. So this is nice and glued and dry on there. So I'm going to steam this first of all. So just turning my steamer on, and the reason why I'm steaming all of this on here, as previously said in other videos, is that I need to make sure that all of the colour on here doesn't come off, especially all of the painting detail doesn't come off into the glaze. So just going to do it very gently. So just putting your hand here just to feel where the heat is. It's very hot there. So just about up to here is absolutely fine. So just going underneath, nice steady steam. Don't do it too much, just enough so it just goes down on the inside as well. It's perfectly fine. And if you don't have glaze at home, that's perfectly fine. It's captured all of the dust on there, it's set it all onto there, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could just leave it as it is. You could go one stage further and you could glaze all of that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a spoon, because sometimes that helps. So I'll just go onto here, and then just sets all of the colour a little bit better onto there. So I'm just kind of washing it. Can you see? It's just washing it. Look how beautiful the colour just comes out straight away. So just immersing that straight into there, just going underneath, just going down onto the inside, just giving it a little bit of a wash like that. And you'll see that none of the detail comes off because I put it into the steamer. Okay, so just let it drip a second there. And then we're going to put that into, I'll just turn it that way so you can see all of the actual glaze that comes here. So it should be just a nice clear liquid, which it is. So just holding onto there. Do be careful not to do this too quickly or too hard, because you don't want to have gone through all of this work and then it go flying off. So it is just attached just at the front there. Now you would think that that would be fine. Well, I can guarantee you it's still a little bit wet on the inside. So don't be thinking that it's done and then put it into the oasis, because sometimes you'll see drip marks coming down. So do make sure that you I just do this for about 30 seconds. Just keep on going, keep on going. I do this when I do the roses that I do, the full avalanche rose. I put into the glaze and then just keep on, you know, giving it a bath like that, and then put it over here and then keep on spinning and spinning and spinning. And I do that for nearly a minute, nearly a full minute. Just keep on going like that. And then just have a quick look. It's absolutely fine. There's no drip marks on there at all. It's beautiful. It's all of the dust has been secured onto the actual throat now, and none of that will come off. So then the next stage that I'm going to do is I'm going to put some tiny little bits of glue just around the outside on here, and then down onto the little pollen tracks in there. I'm going to put some tiny little hairs, some little yellow hairs onto the inside, and some little white hairs just on the outside here, just to give those finishing touches, and then put the whole orchid together. So I'm going to show you how to colour the petals. So I do have the real flower just at the bottom down here, and then the one at the top is mine. I've also got on the pardon me, on the front table here, I've got the ones I've made, and then obviously these ones are the coloured ones on here, just as a point of reference. So I've got and I just use a 28 gauge wire in here. Now it just holds it up. Okay, now if I used a 26, that's perfectly fine to do so as well, but I'd need to make it a little bit more thicker, or thicker at the bottom. Okay, but that's perfectly fine. It just stands up. It's okay. But I do need to give this a little bit of help when I'm actually going to be taping it onto onto the throat and the column, because it is such quite a heavy petal. You know, I do need to help it a little bit by sticking on there so it's not flopping around. So if you watch some of the other videos, you would have seen that I just do this little trick where I take the floristry tape, pull that to release the glue, and then get my fingers nice and sticky, nice and tacky on there, so it's easier for me to actually start taping. I do this whenever I'm going to start to do my taping. So taking a very, very small piece of, it's the same tape, wine coloured tape. I've just put this through a tape shredder, and I'm going to attach this onto here before I actually start colouring. So just holding that like that, get my finger around there, and then just twisting very, very gently, not too, do it quite loosely on there, quite loosely, and then holding the actual wire underneath, and then I'm going to push this all the way up so it meets the rest of the actual petal. So really, really push it right up underneath there, and then put lots and lots of strength, just pinching it, using the heat in your fingers to actually stick this piece of tape onto the wire. You need to have this really, really, really stuck onto that wire. If it's loose, then it's a little bit of a nightmare when you start to tape up. So that's that first bit done onto there. So I do that with all of my petals before I actually start to colour them. So going on to the colouring, I'm going to be using the colour that I was using before for the actual throat, on the side of the throat. You know, so the base colour on here, and then a little bit darker colour on here. So this is the dusky pink, and then I've used the claret that's on here, and there's a little bit of African violet in there. I've also made a paint on here, and this is just with water. You could add some alcohol in there as well if you wanted to. You know, I've actually added the two together. It's fine, and you can, you know, just make a paint, or just use alcohol, or just use water, whichever you choose to do. And so I've used a little bit of the claret in here, and made like kind of a, let's just show you the colour of that before I actually start painting with it. So just going into here, and it's just, let's just get that onto there so you can see it a little bit. There you are. So it's that kind of colour, it's the base colour, and it's to give me like a line that actually goes down the centre of each one, front and back of the actual petal. So taking my paintbrush, I'm going to actually do this first before I start dusting. Okay, so I actually bought the real flower, of course, and then I took my scalpel and then I dissected and took each petal and then had them all front and then turned them over, and then just because they all have a slightly different, let's just take one of these from here. You'll actually see that they all have a slightly different pattern on here. So this one I've put a few little lines there and then a broken line there and then just up to the front. And then as you can see on the back, it's more of a fuller line there and then fading off towards the back. So that's what I need to mimic and copy on there. So taking my little Perspex square, going in, and I always colour from my little Perspex square. There we go. Now it's not going to be too dark. I don't want it too dark because as I'm going to be putting the dust on, that's going to encourage, it's going to go darker with that dust as well. So it's just a little line. So have a little play first of all. Whenever you're going to be doing this, don't do it on the front. Always do it on the back first. Very, very good tip. I tend to colour my flowers backwards. So if I do tend to make any mistakes, then they're hidden on the back. So just going down, just going to do some little long lines there, just on the side. That's fine, just like that. And then going to go in through the centre. Now, have just a little play with your hand first of all. Just see the movement of where you're going to go. Okay, so just going through the centre here. There we go, and I'm going to go all the way down, nice and thick in the middle, and then straight down. Doesn't matter if you've done a little bit of a wobble, as I have there. I'm just going to just take the excess off, and then just correct that slightly, just on there. That's fine. And then I'm going to make that a little bit of a thicker, darker line down the middle. Okay. All of this is going to have the dust on top anyway, so if you have made a slight little mistake, it really doesn't matter. And as I said, they are all individual. So then going onto the front, so what I tend to do is I'll do all of the backs first of all, put them all down onto a piece of paper, let them dry, and then I'll go around and then do all of the fronts. So I'll just show you the front. So we'll do a slightly different pattern on this one. A little bit darker onto there, that's it. And then I'm going to do like a slightly broken, little dots like that, slightly broken, and then put the line down the middle and then fading off up to the front, just like that. Okay, so now I can start doing my dusting. So taking a nice flat-ended brush, I'll just do the front for you so you can, so I'm just going to take this colour here, let's take that out of the way, and then just load my brush up. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to be just holding the wire here and my fingers are behind just for support. So holding the petal up so the dust falls down to gravity, and I want to keep this area free here, okay, so I'm just going to, that's why you need like a flat-ended brush. So you can actually get the projection on there, that's fine. Okay, and then just coming down onto this side, that's it. And then using the front of your brush, just going into there, that's it. As you can see, a tiny little bit of my colours just come off there. Normally I would let them all dry, so they're all, dry, and then it's going to not come off. But just showing you, so just coming down, lots and lots of colour onto both sides there, and then loading your brush up. What you want to do is then start using the back of the brush, and then just going down, going down, going down. Try not to get too much colour onto the edges around here. I'm going to be colouring those with a little bit of white later on, so I tend to go round using the front of the brush. That's it, look at the angle, so the dust just falls down onto here. Try not to get it onto the edge, and then loading your brush up and then holding it down like this, and then just going flat. You see, just nice and flat straight onto there, starting to build up these lovely veins. Okay, so just getting just those veins going first of all, that's fine. And then I'm going to soften all of this, so then going back over certain areas, not all over, just onto there, just onto that. Can you see I'm just going up leaving little areas of white kind of poking through onto there, the cream paste, just building up the layers onto there, okay? Now I'm going to put on a little bit more deeper colour, so just going into the claret and then loading my brush up, and then I'm going to go over this area again here, there we go, just going straight over that and then getting that colour straight onto there and then coming down using the front of the brush like that. That's fine. Now I've still got a lot of colour onto my brush, so I'm going to do exactly the same on the other side. Just coming down, and you can see I'm using the front of the brush, like going down in brush strokes like that. Then load my brush up and then start to go over with the flat of the brush. There you go. Using the flat of the brush, look what's happening. Even going over this white area, look, just going straight over there, and then it starts to bring up all of those lovely veins that are on here. If you need to, use the front of the brush. I've got a little bit, just use the front of the brush to take off, and then go back down. So using all the front of the brush, and it's up to you of how much pressure you put on here and how much paint you have on the dust. So if you have lots on there, look what happens. It's lots and lots of veins. I don't want to necessarily have too much, so I'm going to go over and kind of soften that off a little bit. At the front, at the top here, I want to be using my projection, but I'm just going into there and then going round, giving myself a little bit of a line. That's it. Just going around, give myself like a little lip onto there, and then I'm going to then fade down, putting quite a bit of colour on the top. They are quite dark towards, that's it. And then just coming down. So then going back over again, just to enhance all of those veins, you see? So just going back over again, over all of this colour. So just going from side to side, bringing out all of the veins, especially up at the top here. That's it, get quite a lot of colour onto there. And then I'm going to finish this off by just gently going over that painted area there, just a little bit. And then I'm going to just go around all of the edge on here with the white. So just taking a small amount of white, any white at all, any white dust that you have. This one is from Sugar Flower. There we go. And just taking the excess off, and I'm going to be just using the front of the actual brush, just like this, just to kind of rub around those edges. So just rubbing around there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the brush at the back of the brush, just like that. It just catches around the edges. You don't have to have this all the way down, or it all depends on what orchid you're doing, but as you can see on here, it's really highlighted, you know, just these areas on here. It's not brilliant white, it's not, but as I put this into the glaze and as I carry on going around here, it's actually mixing in with the other colours that's on there, so it does kind of turn it a little bit kind of pinky colour. So just using the brush just onto here, that's it. Up to you how far you go down the actual petal, so you're then using the back of the brush on here. There we go. Now when I did the actual throat of the orchid as well, I omitted to tell you that just around the edge, I'll just take this one here, just around the edge of the throat, just to highlight on there, I did actually go over and just put little bits of white just onto the top and just around the sides, just on there, just a tiny little bit. Okay, so just going back to, so just using the back of the brush, that's it. Look at this, the dust is just falling down to gravity, that's fine. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit on here, that will all come off in the glaze anyway. Or you could just go back over again and then just make sure that there's no white on there. There we go. Okay, so then do that front and back on there, and then you're going to glaze the whole petal, which I'm just going to do for you very, very quickly. So just opening up your glaze, and then we're just going to give it a tiny little wash in here. So I'll just bring this just round here. So just holding the wire, and you'll see it transform straight away. You'll see all of these dark veins on here, they'll just start to come to life, okay? So just going into the glaze, so just give it just transforms straight away, look at that, straight away. So just give it a little bit of a wash and then let it drip a couple of seconds and then straight into here and then spin. Keep on spinning until it looks more or less dry. As I said, this is a quarter glaze in here, so there won't be any sheen or any shine on at all. After I've put the whole flower together, I do tend to put a little bit of a spray, PME spray, just onto the stem and onto the back of the actual petals. It has a little bit of a sheen on there. Okay, so that's more or less dry, and that's the actual petals there. So I'll just bring another one up here just for reference. Okay, so that's how I do the petals for the orchid. So I'm going to show you how to attach the small hairs that come off the pollen tract right on the inside, down on here, on there, and those are going to be the yellow hairs, and then we're going to put some tiny little white hairs just on the outside round here. So what I did was I took just a normal cotton bud and then a little bit of yellow dust, and then put some alcohol into there and just made up a paint. Now if you're finding that that paint is far too intense, then just add in a lot more alcohol. So it's kind of like water, it's like watercolours. Can you see? It's not so intense. Okay. And then I just took the cotton bud and then just put that straight into there. Just take the excess off and then let that just dry, just naturally dry. The alcohol will just evaporate off to give me a cotton bud that's completely dry, but it's all coloured in yellow. Now comes for the fun part. So what I did was I actually pulled just from underneath there, so I just opened the cotton bud, there we go, just open it and pulling it off like that. Okay, so I've got an amount just coming off, and then I'm just going to go into here and then just start to pull up. So you're just pulling little strands just off and then putting each little strand next to each other like that. So getting all of those strands in one, but so they kind of stick onto your hand, just one little strand like that. So they're all next to each other, okay? So then I'm going to come along and I'm going to give this a little bit of a haircut just underneath here. So I'm just going to cut all of that along there. Now with fine scissors like that, they didn't tend to work. It tended to all kind of stick together and like that. But with big kitchen scissors, these are slightly, what's the word? They're slightly serrated on here. So I actually can I'm just going to just go through underneath and just take off, just to begin with, the top there, which will give me, it's a little bit flatter on there. So I'll just take that off my scissors. Okay. And then I'm going to go and then just cut this now, and I only want it to be about 2 millimeters wide. And it will all stick to the scissors just on the side, so that's fine. Just cutting down onto there, that's what I'm looking for. And then don't open the scissors out, just go with the scriber now. And then just go down and just kind of releasing and kind of pulling away. So I'm just kind of going like that, and they should all come off in one long, one long kind of strand like that, but they're all, let me just get these scissors out of my hand and put that onto my fingers, there we go. So they're all kind of in one long strand, just like that, okay? But because I cut them with the scissors before, like that, then that means that they're all kind of cut on the top. So I need to kind of go in with the scriber now, and then just kind of pull away, so it makes them a little bit more spiky. Okay? And then that's what I have over here. So they're all in one Whoopsie, very, very delicate. So they're all in one length, and that's what I've got on here. So I'm going to attach those onto the pollen tracts. So just taking a little bit of glue. So taking my throat, and then I'm just going to take the excess off, and I'm just going to go over the pollen tracts, and you'll actually be able to see all of the little dots that I put on the pollen tracts through the cotton wool on here. So then taking a pair of tweezers, making sure that they're nice and dry, they're not going to stick, and then just lifting this up, and then you want to then put that onto, just on top, so it just sticks, that's fine. And then I'm going to use my scriber now, and then I'm going to guide that down, so just down on top there, just making sure that it's just gently stuck, and making sure with the scriber, and I can then push up, so then all of the hairs are standing upwards. And then I'll just do the other one very, very quickly. So just putting some glue onto the other side. And then just with the other one that I've got here, just placing that one onto there. And it just makes it look a little bit more real. Obviously, if you are doing this for competition work, then do ring the judges up and just make sure that it's okay to use cotton wool. I did see years ago that someone had done the national flower from South Africa, and they'd put all cotton wool just onto that. I think it was at Telford actually, and I think that they got gold. You know, so it all depends on which show that you're doing and what competition you're doing. So just there we go. So just attaching those onto there. I'm just going to put some clear, where's my, here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to put some clear hairs just around the outside. And these are even finer, okay, so do bear with. So all I'm doing is I'm just pulling off, just very, very gently, just pulling off like that. Just a couple of hair, that's absolutely fine. And I'm just going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to cut into this. It's micro work. Some of you people may think I'm absolutely mad as a hatter, but it just sets it off. It really, really does. You know, they do have tiny little hairs around the outside, so I need to get a tiny brush. Okay, very, very tiny brush. So I'm just using normal edible glue. Don't just put it all the way around the outside. You're going to have to do these, you know, intermittently. So just going to put a little bit just around the outside. Don't put too much on there. Just a tiny bit. So I'll just start just on the top bit there, and then I go round here, and then just starting to go onto the throat there, and then the same on this corner over here. I'll just do this little bit for you over here. So just taking the scissors, the tweezers. That's it. And then I tend to get them in my finger. The camera might not be picking this up, but just taking kind of one at a time, and then just going on, and then just sticking them on all the way on the outside. Yes, they may be a little long on there, but then after that, you could then come in and then just give them a tiny little haircut, and then just trim them all down. So all down that side, all down that side, and then the next video, so then I'll bring this one over here so you can actually see. So there's just tiny little hairs just onto there and down onto the inside there, and it just makes it look a little bit more special. So the next video I'm going to do is putting all of the whole orchid together, and that's that. So I'm going to put together the whole orchid now. So this is my finished throat and all of the petals here. So before I actually attach any of the petals onto here, you can just see underneath the bottom on here, it's really quite a thick column there, so I need to be making a stem, not as wide as that, but a stem nevertheless underneath. So I'm just going to be taking a piece of floristry tape, wine floristry tape, just starting an inch down, just going right up underneath the actual throat and then just coming down, all depending on how long you want your actual throat, your stem to be. So I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom, onto there. Now I could put the little ribbons of paper around here, but I want this a little bit more sturdy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in 2 other wires. So just putting the wire right next to that there, these are an 18 gauge wire, and then instead of trying to, trying to you know, cut it exactly the same length as that one, just cut both off at the same time. So they both will be exactly the same. Okay. So you could just leave it just like that if you wanted to, or you could put another one on there, which I am going to do. So there's actually 3 wires on here, and then exactly the same, just go straight through all 3 on there, and then they're all exactly the same. So taking the tape and just attaching those wires underneath the column, and then just coming all the way down. It's okay, I've not gone in fast forward. So just coming all the way down. And what I'm doing is I'm going round quite a few times onto the bottom, just down here, because I'm going to be displaying this just so you can have a look, see how they look. And I want this to be a little bit thicker down at the bottom, so it actually goes into my Kenzen, and that's the Kenzen there. So I'm just going to try it. I've got one into the vase over there, so it needs to be, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit more around the base. Just a little bit more. Don't have it too thick. And then that should fit in there beautifully. Okay, now to thicken all of this stem up on here, I'm going to use some ribbon, some paper ribbon. So I just use some paper towel and then just cut them, folded them up, and then just cut them into ribbons and then just open them up and then put that underneath here. Stem up a little bit more, then keep on going around and round and round with the floristry tape. So that's perfectly fine. I'm just going to put a short stem on there, don't need it anymore. So just taking some floristry tape, starting from the bottom, don't let go here because otherwise it's going to all unravel, and then just go around, keeping your tape nice and taut. I'm just going round and round up to the top, and then I'm just going to come down again and then go back up again. Okay, so now I've got a nice thick stem on there, and up towards the top here it's a lot thicker, so when I attach the actual petals onto here they're not going to, you know, go underneath the actual column. Okay, so I am going to just put that into there, and I'm just going to show you what I've done on here before. I think this was on the other video, that I put a tiny little bit of tape just onto here using either a half width, or you could, so I'll just do a half width, that's absolutely fine. And then just coming down, putting the full width tape into the shredder, and then just bringing that down. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that to release the glue, and then I'm going to take the top petal here, and then I'm just going to attach this onto the top petal. So with my tacky fingers, just go over there, then just put 2 fingers on, and then just turning it round, but quite loosely, and then bringing it down just about an inch. That's absolutely fine. And then holding the wire underneath, then push this right up so it meets the rest of the actual petal, and then putting your fingers onto here, and then putting lots and lots of pressure so it really does stick onto the paper covered wire, and then just pull that off. It only needs to be about an inch, that's absolutely fine. I've done all the rest, so now I can start to put the whole flower together. this out of the way. Okay, so taking a nice piece of fresh tape, we're going to start. So pulling this to release the actual glue. You need to be looking on the orchid. So I'm just going to bring this one so you can see a little bit better. So have a look at the actual orchid and see which petals would actually be stuck on there first of all. And they are these two wing petals over here, okay? The other ones, this one and at the bottom, are from behind. So I'm going to attach these two first of all. So just coming with my tape quarter of the way down and then just going right up underneath the orchid. So this is lovely and taut now. So taking each one of the petals and then just position them just onto the side, and then with your tape just pull and just go around once with the tape, and then use the heat in your fingers to really, really, really melt the floristry tape onto there, and then with this wire, pull this wire. Now sometimes they can, because they are a 28 gauge wire, sometimes they like slip out of your hands, so just do it with a pair of pliers. So I'm just going to hold onto there, and then I'm just going to pull down. So because it's got that little bit of floristry tape at the top, it really, really does stick into there and makes it really, really, really quite secure. Okay, so I'm just going to go around once more with the tape. It doesn't matter too many times. It doesn't matter how many times you go around, because you want this to be a nice thick stem anyway. So I'm going to put the other one on the other side. There we go. So just go around once with the tape, and then just have a sneaky little look, just have a see what it is looking like. And then I'm going to just hold onto there, taking the pliers, keeping my finger on the top of there, and then just pull down, and then really, really, really using the heat in my fingers to melt the glue onto there. That's fine. Okay, just go around once with the tape again. And then I'm going to put the two bottom petals on. And these slightly just come from, you want that up there, they slightly come from underneath. So I'm not sure if you can see there. So just slightly underneath, so it's slightly half on, half off, just there. So just go around once with the tape, pull that really nice and taut, and then really, really use the heat in your fingers to really secure that onto there. And these petals do actually kind of, so on some of the orchids, you can see they just kind of meet underneath. So just don't forget to be pulling this wire. It will really, really secure it onto there. So just pull the wire, and then we're going to go around to the other side. And then attaching that one. And notice how I put all of my petals in the right place before I actually went and attached them. Don't just have them all in a row, because sometimes you might put the wrong petal on in the wrong place. And all of these petals have been specially cut, you know, and they do go in a specific way. So just lifting that wire up, and then putting my finger over the top, and then just pulling that down, just to secure it. Okay, so really go onto there, but use the heat in your fingers to really, really, really secure them all onto there, okay? And then I'm going to just have a little look at the front, just to see before I put the last petal on. That's fine. And then going to the top one now, so I'm going to actually bend this all the way back, just like that, okay? So the wire will go straight down the stem, and then you want to put that on just behind the two top petals, and then just go round, whoopsie, just go around once with the actual tape, use the heat in your fingers, that's it, really push that right down, and then you can either use your fingers, you can just pull if you want to, or use a pair of pliers, and then go round with the tape. So what I tend to do is I'll just keep on going round with the tape. Now be quite brave now, just keep on going round and round and round. Some of the petals may move, it's absolutely fine, it's not too much of a problem. You will find with big flowers like this and very fleshy flowers, especially when you use thinner wire like I have with a 28, that they may be prone to moving a little. So just going back up and down, up and down, up and down with the tape, disguising any of the little wires. And then we're going to be giving the actual stem on here a little bit of colour, and I'm going to put some veins in there as well. So I'm going to actually, it doesn't matter about all of the petals at the moment, I'm just going to put my fingers behind here and I'm going to actually move the whole throat all facing downwards, so he's kind of like bowing down. So I'm going to go underneath here and I'm going to be really brave and just go right into there. Just make sure that he's not going to one side. So he's facing me here, so he can just come down and then just bend down like that. And then I can move all the other petals accordingly, so that's fine. So he's kind of got that angle like that, that's fine. And then moving all of the petals into place. Okay. And then I tend to move the bottom petals round so they kind of cup up underneath, so they kind of meet like that. That's it. And finally what I'm going to do is just on the stem here, just to make it look a little bit more natural, is I'm going to use a scriber and I'm going to go into there, being very careful, just going into there and then just putting some little marks coming down. They're like little veins that go down, little indents. Just going all the way around, all the way down on both sides, all underneath as well. That's it. Lovely. And then finally, I'm just going to finish off by putting a little bit of colour onto the actual stem. So just using the colour that I coloured the petals with, the final colour, which is the claret. And then just going on and just colouring that stem. And then just to give this a tiny, if you remember in the first video that I did explaining about the orchid, there is a little bit of a sheen just on the back. So what I want to do is I want to use a PME clear spray, which is somewhere in this room. I think Paul's going to try and find it for me. There it is, it's on the other table. Thank you very much, Paul. And so I'm just going to give it a tiny little spray. I always advise, if you are using a spray or a glaze, do make sure that you wash your hands, because it is a little bit like a varnish. And so I'm just going to move this arrangement out of the way, and I'll just spray only a tiny little bit. You could steam this if you wanted to. So, but I'd like to want to just put a little bit of sheen just on the back. Yes, it will go very, very shiny, but then it dries and then it just has a little bit of a shine. So just be very, very delicate with this. So just kind of just have that paper towel. Okay, sorry. So just be very, very delicate. So tiny little burst, just have a little practice first. Just a little bit on there, a little bit there, just underneath. And then a little bit just on the back. That's fine, no more than that, that's fine. So I'm going to then put this into the arrangement with the other orchids in here. I'll just put that maybe at the side so it kind of comes out on that side. Let's just bend that there. So I've bent it a little bit, and then that should, he should poke out on that side over there, and then I'll turn that around. Okay, and that's how I make the Cymbidium orchid, and he's complete and finished. So I'm going to be making the column for the orchid. So these are in the set that I've actually selling, which the link is underneath this video. Putting it onto the foam pad, putting a lot of corn flour in here. I can't stress that enough. You have to put lots and lots of corn flour in there, and then take all the excess out. Really, really warm the paste up, and then make it into a torpedo shape, and then just roll it in a little bit of corn flour, and then place that down inside, and then just help it along with your fingers and just across like that. Or sometimes I'll just use the Dresden tool and then just push that up a tiny little bit more, just there, and then put the mould back on again, off, and then you can see it's giving you the anther cap on the top there. Now just at the sides down here, we just need to tidy this up slightly. So just using a mini Kemper tool and just go down the side here, and then don't be using a craft knife, otherwise it may cut into the actual silicone. If you've got enough corn flour on there, it should just pop straight out, and it just gives you the whole shape, every single thing into there. Now you need to attach this straight onto a wire, so I've got a 20 gauge wire. Also on this side over here, we'll just take make it nice and thin there, and then I'll take a fine pair of embroidery scissors and just put a little bit of corn flour on, and then just correct the sides here, just going down and then just snipping off. So I've got the veiners here, and they are from the front and from the back of the actual petal, so they are very, very botanically correct. A little bit of corn flour on top, and then taking my rolling pin, just roll that out, not too thin, as I said, and then push up into the middle and then push out, and then go back over that ridge 5 degrees that way, and then push in and then push out. Push in and push out, push in and push out. Going all the way around, just keeping the knife there, turning this round, going up to the top, and then going all the way around. Close, and then just feel the wire just going down. You must twist the wire as it goes down on the inside. Just twisting it down. There we go. So that's nice and flat. So then I can put this into the veiner, and then just hold this end up, and then press right down, really massaging it down onto there. I'm actually going to turn this over, and then I'll place that then on top of there, so then I don't destroy all of that. And then just let that go very leathery, keep on going back to it, and then just keep on coaxing the edges round, and that will give you a really nice petal. So that's that bottom petal on there. Folding that like that, putting it down into the middle, placing this one on top, and then squashing that right down onto there, really moulding this round. So that's there, my preparation first of all. And then on the other side, pushing into the centre and then rolling out, and then down onto this side here. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a little ridge all down the centre there. So this is just going to be on the inside here. These are going to be for the little pollen tracks. That's on the inside here. So I need to leave all this really, really, really nice and thick. There we go. Doesn't matter if it moves a little bit at the front, it's fine. We're going to alter the shape of that anyway. Underneath here, and slightly curve it like that. Slightly curve it before I put it in. So taking the top off the mould, and then putting this down onto the inside. See, I just need a little bit more corn flour in there. I can't stress that enough. And then I'm going to take the throat, and then just open this out, and then gently, gently just slide that down onto there. Just put that onto here, and then just slightly just go onto the edge, thinning that out, just thinning that out into there, and then curve it right back and give it the shape. So I'm going to be colouring the column, which is the middle part of the orchid. And very important, now just hold it up exactly the same, but this time dust downwards, because I don't want it to go up here. So I'm going to be dusting downwards, so just going down into the centre, and then slightly up on the sides, just slightly, the top portion of the column. Now the reason why I'm putting this dust down onto here is just to give a base colour, before I actually go on and put some really dark paint straight onto here. Just give it a little bit of a wash, that's absolutely fine, and then straight into a clear container or a cardboard box at home, and then just spin the excess off. Let me just put that into there like that. I'm going to start to just do like a little bit of a line. It actually, the veiner gives you this line, and then some tiny little dots as well, just going up onto the side, and the same on the other side. Use your artistic license, it's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to steam this first of all, because I don't want any of the little dots to come off. So I'm just going to bring the steamer over. Yes, it will go darker, but that means that it's just, the sugar is melting slightly, and it's just getting all of that colour secure and stable on here, and it just fits on the inside. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to colour the whole thing and get it looking like this on both sides. Okay, I've got it like a directional brush here, so it's like a flat brush, and I'm just going to catch on those pollen tracks. Look at the angle of how, as I'm holding this. I'm not doing it like that, otherwise it would fall straight onto. Now when I was doing all of my veins on here, I would do the other side on the inside here, all on this side here, and all on that side as well here, and then put on some finer details just onto the top there, and then add in, can you just see around the top here, I've gone in with some darker dots, just kind of coming down, and then it just fits on there beautifully, okay, through a tape shredder. And I'm going to attach this onto here before I actually start colouring. So just holding that like that, get my finger around there, and then just twisting very, very gently, not too, do it quite loosely. I'm going to go all the way down, nice and thick in the middle, and then straight down. Doesn't matter if you've done a little bit of a wobble, as I have there. I'm just going to just take the excess off. Okay. Now I'm going to put on a little bit more deeper colour. So just going into the claret. That's it. And then just coming down. There we go. Okay, so then do that front and back on there, and then you're going to glaze the whole petal, which I'm just going to do for you very, very quickly. So just opening up your glaze. So it's kind of like water. It's like watercolours. Can you see? It's not so intense. And then just put that straight into there. Just take the excess off. Opened the cotton bud, there we go, just open it and pulling it off like that. Okay, so I've got an amount just coming off, and then I'm just going to go into here and then just start to pull up, just cutting down onto there. That's what I'm looking for. And then don't open the scissors out, just go with the scriber now, and then just go down and just kind of releasing and kind of pulling away. So I'm just kind of, so then taking a pair of tweezers, making sure that they're nice and dry, they're not going to stick, and then just lifting this up, and then you want to then put that onto, just on top, so it just sticks. That's fine. And then I'm going to use my scriber now, and then I'm going to guide that down, so just down on top there, just making sure that it's just gently stuck. What I'm doing is I'm going round quite a few times onto the bottom, just down here, because I'm going to be displaying this just so you can have a look, have a see how they look. And I want this to be a little bit thicker down at the bottom, so it actually goes into my Kenzen. And that's the Kenzen there. So I'm just going to try it. I've got one into the vase over there, so it needs to be, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit more around the base of the way down, and then just going right up underneath the orchid. So this is lovely and taut now. So taking each one of the petals and then just position them just onto the side. And then with your tape, just pull, following that stem, and then just to give this a tiny, if you remember in the first video that I did explaining about the orchid, there is a little bit of a sheen just on the back. Just a little bit on there, a little bit there, just underneath, and then a little bit just on the back. That's fine, no more than that, that's fine. So I'm going to then put this into the arrangement with the other orchids in here. I'll just put that maybe at the side so it kind of comes out on that side. Let's just bend that there. So I've bent it a little bit, and then that should, he should poke out on that side over there, and then I'll turn that around. Okay, and that's how I make the Cymbidium orchid, and he's complete and finished.